Hi, Ann. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Look at that big smile. You must be doing okay.
Yeah. I was just writing up articles for our news page. If people don't know, at filmnoirfoundation.org, we have a news page, and I put articles up there, and I had two new things, both involving you, to put up there. One was at the Vallejo's Empress Hotel, not Empress Hotel, excuse me, Empress
Empress
Theater.
Theater, yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about that? And then we'll talk about the other thing?
Yes. I do you know the date?
Uh, I can get it
In
for you.
June. It's in
It's
June. It's
June.
like June
Yeah.
23rd or something. I can't honestly, I can't remember right now. But it will be great fun. I'm doing that with Nick Rossi, the NOIR City musical director. I will be screening Johnny O'Clock, and it will free form it. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a book signing,
Yes.
a movie screening, and Nick and I have yet to work out what the rest of the show is going to be, but it's going to be either a conversation or maybe more interactive with the audience or something.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. But it's a great venue, wonderful venue in Vallejo, California. The theater is great, and there's a beautiful like club, like supper club bar attached to it, and a bookstore that's doing the book sales all in one little unit, and it's just fantastic. So
Yes. And so
Nick and I
people,
did something like that before. We showed Pitfall because it
right?
was Vallejo was Raymond Burr's hometown, so we showed Pitfall,
Oh,
and it was really a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to doing that again, and I hope I will be in better condition than when I did it last time. I had a very serious back injury, and I was on a lot of painkillers when I
okay.
did that show before. I'm proud to say I don't think anybody was aware of that, but I'm hoping I haven't had a problem since then, and I'm hoping I'll be fine as a fit as a fiddle for that.
Yeah. And so people know that's the evening of June 21st. And
21st.
you could go to the Empress Theater's website. Or, yeah. I mean, by the time this airs, I'll have a link up on our news page, or you can go
Right.
there. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was In Lonely Places. So I think this will be like a really good film series. So the PFA, which is in Berkeley, is having a series that's based on Imogen Sarah Smith's book, In Lonely Places. And it's kind of interesting because I was talking to her about it, and they just came up with this idea, and then after they came up with the idea of doing a film series based on this book she wrote, um, they decided to ask her to come and introduce films. So she will be there in the what do you call it? The opening weekend. And you're also presenting a couple films, right?
I am. I'm bringing down the curtain weeks later, and this is like a weekly, I believe, film series or something. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but Imogen, she's the mastermind. The PFA is the mastermind, basing on it on Imogen's book, and then David Thompson, the esteemed film writer David Thompson, will host the stuff in the middle, and then I will close it. I think I'm introducing Nightmare Alley and the Phoenix City Story. That's not a double bill; those are two separate shows. And I forget what the rest of the thing is, but
Yeah, so and that is June 6th through July 24th. So Imogen will be there the opening weekend to present four films. And that's The Breaking Point, The Hitchhiker, Desert Fury, and Pursued. And then Dave Thompson's introducing Shadow of a Doubt. And then they are screening multiple films, like The Reckless Moment, which if people haven't seen that, you need to see that film. It's a
fantastic.
great
Is there a
film.
host for that? I don't.
Not for that one,
Yeah, I
no.
didn't see a host for that one.
Yeah, and then Detour, They Live by Night, which it looks
David
like
is hosting.
David's doing that as well. And Leave Her to Heaven, which I'm tempted to go see, even though I've seen it multiple times in the theater. I I really love seeing that movie
Yeah,
on the
it's
big
fantastic
screen.
on the big screen.
Yeah. And so just so people know, that's if you go to their website, and it's bampfa.org.
Pacific Film Archive. For those
Pacific,
watching from somewhere else who don't know
yes.
about it,
And yeah, anyway, so there's quite a few films, and because it's such a long series and it's at the PFA, it's broken up over several weeks, and the first weekend is 4 films, but the rest of the time is 1 or 2 screens a week. And that's also up on our news page. Even though now that we're talking it out, I realize I need to add something to it.
okay, good.
The
I'm
article.
glad we had this discussion.
Me too.
Oh, wait a second. I came in here so late. I'm totally screwing up with my microphone. So
Yeah,
if you can hear me, that's great. But
I can hear
now,
you.
now I'm going to actually set the microphone the way it's supposed to be. So, okay, good.
Okay.
You should have no problems hearing me now.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And so you ready to go on the questions? Or do we have anything
You
else we
bet.
need to talk about?
No, no, let's just dive right in, and I'm sure we'll find things to digress about as we're going along.
And this first question is from Alan. He actually sent it to me like personally, but I thought it would be good to discuss on air.
Okay.
Okay. I saw the 90-second link of Eddie's interviewing Jennifer Tilly. When can we see the entire interview?
Yeah, that was pretty fun. Soon. That was Jennifer Tilly. I think I mentioned this before. Jennifer Tilly appeared with Bound uh, at the Noir City Festival in Los Angeles. That was the culmination of the festival. That was the last day of the festival, and she was just fantastic guest. And it was very, very funny. And yes, it'll be coming soon. We recorded all of the interviews I did in that festival, and the John Dahl one is completely edited and will be up soon. John Dahl with The Last Seduction, John Dahl and Peter Berg, who was in it, and then the interview with Annette Bening for The Grifters, and an interview with Karen Kusama and her husband Phil Hay, the screenwriter, for Destroyer, the Nicole Kidman movie, and then Bound with Jennifer. And Jennifer was a laugh riot. And yeah, we'll be posting that as soon as we can. Patrick Francis and John Gulager, who is Clu Gulager's son, record those and edit them and do all that stuff for us. So greatly appreciate the work they do, but they get to it when they can get to it, and should be soon.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Something about that. Okay, it'll come back to me later, whatever it was I was going to ask you. Anyway, go on to question
Okay,
two.
so that's the answer. Okay, so
Yeah.
Christine in Los Angeles says, obviously this is a newer question for
Yes.
time sensitive. Perhaps you put it up here. Just had a great time at the Arthur Lyons Film Noir Festival, where I got to watch a lot of films I'd never seen before, including Angel Face. In Eddie's introduction to that film, he said that the devastating ending was different than what had originally been planned, and that we could catch him later during the festival to hear about the original ending. I should never do this because for the rest of the weekend, I was just having people come up to me and say, "So what was the original ending?" And so instead of doing it, but I can't do it on stage, right? Because we don't do outros. So I'm certainly not going to talk about the ending before the movie. Even though that movie does have the worst one sheet poster of all time. I have like 3 copies of it because I can't. Maybe I subconsciously buy them to keep people from seeing them because you know what I'm talking about. The poster gives away the entire movie,
like a major spoiler,
spoils the ending, and spoils the ending. It was so perverse. But leave it to Howard Hughes to do something that bizarre to one of his own movies, like give away the whole shock ending on the poster. And anyway, so I didn't want to spoil that, so I didn't tell it. Anyway, yeah. So if people who are watching this who have not seen Angel Face, I'm warning you right now, don't listen. I'll signal you. I'll give you 2 thumbs up when I'm done. but don't listen until you see me give 2 thumbs up. So the original ending in the screenplay was that Frank, that's the Robert Mitchum character, discovers Diane, the Gene Simmons character, tampering with the car at the end of the film, and and I'm trying to remember how it worked in the movie. Like she was giving him the car or something as a parting gift, and he discovers her tampering with the car, and then he realizes that she's been responsible for the deaths of both of her parents, and they get into an argument, and he ends up pushing her down a flight of stairs, and she breaks her neck and dies, and then he doing the right thing, and those weren't 2 thumbs up, those were quotation marks, doing the right thing, he turns himself into the police and goes to jail for manslaughter at the end of the movie. And in my estimation, a total dud.
Yeah.
Nothing can compare to the just the fabulous, dreadful elegance of that ending, with the popping of the champagne cork and her throwing the sports car into reverse, and one of the great over the cliff, stunts, if you want to call it that, ever. And I was dumbfounded when people would ask me this, how many people said, "Oh, that was a much better ending, the original one. Like, I wish it had ended like that." And I almost wanted to say to people, "Are you sure you're at the right film festival?" I mean, if you like, why would you want such a mundane, boring ending? Like, they just don't want to see Robert Mitchum killed. I guess that's it. I mean, it astounds me how many times I reveal like the atrociously bad ending that, thank God, they fixed, and then people say, "Oh no, I like the original ending a lot better. That would have been much better." And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, teacher, I mean, because people always lament that On Dangerous Ground doesn't have the ending that Nicholas Ray, you know, intended, but I like the ending of what actually was in the final print. And no one agrees with me, but for me, it's just like, I really like that ending anyway.
It's funny. Um, I'm just going to put this out there. Just tell me if you agree with this, Anne. I find that when I was younger, I loved the bleaker and more miserable the ending,
Yeah.
the more I just wallowed in it. I loved a really downer ending.
Yeah.
As I get older, it's not that I don't like a downer ending, but I'm more accepting of a kind of, and then he just walked away at the end, and it's like, it's not a tragic ending, but it's just like, okay, fine,
Yeah.
whatever. I'll accept that ending.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, I think that's just part of the aging process. I think that you don't want to see everybody meet a horrible fate at the end of the film. But when we're talking about film noir, part of the whole appeal of these films is that they were pushing against the envelope,
Mm-hmm.
and the artists were being told you can't have a downer ending. So when they got away with it, it made it extra special. It's kind of delicious to see these horrible endings.
Yeah.
And like the ending of Angel Face, which is one of my all-time favorite endings in a noir film, it's kind of shocking additionally, because that was against the production code, because Gene Simmons is committing suicide,
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
and that was not allowed. And there were certain movies of that period where, what happened? I mean, I would love to investigate this. Like, I would love to look at the production files for Angel Face and see like what had to be done to get that past the code. And
Yeah.
and and also a film like Humoresque, where Joan
Yeah.
Crawford kills herself at the end of the film. She walks into the, sorry, spoilers for those who haven't seen Humor. Oh, I never did this. So I have to do that.
Just in time
Um,
for a spoiler for a different
good,
movie.
good. So then I didn't spoil humoresque for people because they were waiting for the two thumbs up. So anyway, that stuff is always fascinating to me, and like what was the one I did the audio commentary for? For the Brasher Doubloon, the Raymond Chandler novel that 20th Century Fox adapted. They that ends with a suicide. The novel ends with a suicide that was not allowed in the film version, and so it has that kind of really mild. Who's that at the door? Oh, it's the police. Just in time, and they come in and they take the guilty party away at the end instead of the poetic ending, which was they jump out a window and kill themselves, which is an incident that triggers the entire plot in the movie is somebody falling out a window or being pushed out a window. And so it made, poetic sense that that would be the comeuppance for the guilty party and in the story, but the production code wouldn't allow it. So
Even though it has been done like multiple times, suicides, I mean, because, and I don't feel this is a spoiler because there's been like four versions of the story, but A Star is Born.
yeah, yeah,
And somehow that was just allowed even in the 50s, when they did the remake with Judy Garland, you
yeah.
know. By the way,
And
if people haven't seen the original of that, I saw that on nitrate at the Egyptian Theater during TCM.
yeah,
And it was amazing, especially when it got to the scene in front of Grauman's Theater at the end, because of course I was like a few blocks
you were
away
just
from
right
it
there. Yeah,
when I saw it. But that first version is really great. I mean, I like the Judy Garland version too, because I mean Judy Garland's just so enormously talented. You know what I mean? Like you just
yeah,
watch her, and it's like,
yeah.
how is someone this talented? And not just the singing either. I mean, her acting and that
She's
too.
terrific. She's
It's
terrific in that
incredible on
film.
that. But I really do like the first version the best.
Four versions
Four
of the
versions, yeah.
story. Yeah, it's kind
Yeah.
of amazing. Um, I was going to say something else, but I forget now. Having to do with that. Oh, the film we just mentioned a moment ago, Leave Her to Heaven,
Yeah.
is kind of the same thing. I mean, in that one, and I won't talk about it because if people haven't seen it, I mean, the plot is so weird and perverted, and the Gene Tierney's character is so psychologically unstable.
Yeah.
uh, but there's stuff in that they managed to get past the production code, probably because it was a bestseller
Yeah.
and it was Fox. I think Daryl Zanuck was really good at twisting the arm of the Breen office
Yeah,
and
because they got away
getting
with
them.
multiple things in Leave Her to Heaven.
Yeah.
Multiple things.
Yep. Um, anyway, so that was the original end of Angel Face, which in my estimation is a dud, and I'm so glad that Otto Preminger did that beautiful change at the end.
Oh, and I also want to let people, because now I remembered what I was going to say before, because we were talking about your interview with Jennifer Tilly and the other interviews from NOIR City Hollywood. If people don't know, we have a YouTube channel, which is where this gets posted after we do our live on Facebook. And anyway, so on there are just like all these interviews from different festivals that you and Alan have done. So it's really, plus all our episodes and all the shorts I've made of our, not shorts, but like hot takes
Right.
from our different
Right.
things. Just so people know, you can find all that stuff there.
Yep.
Okay, this is from Malvina. First, I love Dark City Dames. I watched Purple
Yep.
Noon, introduced by you and Alicia Malone. Forgive my ignorance, but why is it called Purple Noon? What does that mean?
Yeah, that was recently when I had the great pleasure of hosting Alicia on TCM to publicize her book,
Yeah.
TCM Imports, which is really terrific. And she picked three movies to show, and we talked about them. And yes, Purple Noon was one of them, Plein Soleil, and which I believe. I mean, it's just a weird. The English translation of the original French title is not. It actually has nothing to do with that title. I mean, what it means, in French, I believe it means the actual American equivalent of it would be like in broad daylight, or
Mm,
or out in the open, or something like that.
yeah.
Is kind of what it translates to, and it was just playing off the fact that it's the brightest, most sun bleached noir story imaginable, and so that's why they just played up the sunlight and the daytime, because these dreadful things that Tom Ripley does, he does in broad daylight.
Yeah.
So that's actually what the title is. It's like in broad daylight, but for some weird reason they called it Purple Noon. I mean, I would look around at that time and see what other movies were being distributed internationally at that point, and see if there was something about colors and titles that was like a thing right then.
I
So,
know.
so that they were like, oh, we'll call it, pick a color and we'll call it that, and we'll say noon because it's the high point of the day. That's all. That's what it means. Okay, Cliff in Fort Collins, Colorado, says, I just finished Daniel Kellman's recent novel, The Director. I loved it. He brought many film noir directors, actors, and others to life in wonderful and dazzling ways. Have you read the book? No, I have not. Anne, have you read it?
No.
I'm going to be honest with you, Cliff. I haven't even heard of it until your question. So thank you for that. Can you recommend other works of fiction that incorporate film noir artists? Thanks for everything you do, and thanks for the comfort food, which he says in Noir City 22. Okay. I'm going to throw out a few of these. Obviously, my friends Vince and Rosemary Keenan
Yeah.
write a series of Hollywood mystery novels under the name Renee Patrick. Their Nero Wolfe like detective is Edith Head. There's actually, like, the Archie Goodwin is a woman named Lillian Frost, was a wannabe actress who becomes like an amateur sleuth in these stories, and they're terrific, and they're filled with Hollywood people, and it works really, really well. So I highly recommend those. They're very good, sturdy, breezy, well crafted novels. I'm trying to think. There was another one that will come to me, but the one of recent times, and I know I have it right here somewhere, is called. It's by a Scottish poet named Robin Robertson. It's called The Long Take, and it's a very interesting book that it's very, very film noir inspired, and if memory serves, it takes place in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, during the filming of Crisscross. And so Robert Siadmak is actually a character in the book, and it's not the picaresque kind of thing that uh, the Edith Head novels are, but it really gives you a feel for the period, and it's clearly written by somebody who is deeply inspired by all the noir movies, and it's a really good book in its own right. And there's another one that I'm embarrassed to say is slipping my mind right now. Damn it. Okay, we'll move on, and I'll see if I can come up with it. But it was, oh, I know what it was. Lauren Esselman, who is a veteran writer of genre fiction. I was going to say crime fiction, but he writes westerns and all kinds of stuff. So, but he has a series of books with a character named Valentino, who I may have mentioned this before. Now that I think about it, he's a film preservationist, and I swear to you that Lauren was basing this on somebody that he knows. And because actually my agent at one point said, why don't you write a series of books about somebody like you who researches the missing films and stuff and gets involved in all kinds of chicanery and blah blah blah. And I didn't do it, and so Lauren did.
Yeah.
Not that we talked about it at all, but then just one day I saw, because Lauren is one of the most prolific writers I know. And he, I don't know how many of these he's done, 6 or 7 of them now. And he is dependable. Lauren
Yeah.
is dependable. And so that was it. So but those you have to look for. Like if you look up Lauren, you'll see just so many books. It's incredible. But it's the Valentino books are the ones about that incorporate the film business into them. Okay.
Okay. Oh, we're on 5. Uh, David from Carmel Valley, California.
Yeah,
When
that would be Carmel Valley. That's a Carmel, Carmel, right down the coast.
I know, sorry guys. In a beautiful part of the world, it really is. When I love this question so much. I was so excited when I saw this question. When I'm shopping for films on hard media, Blu-ray 4K, I often see brand new scan from the original camera negative. Are they really running the original camera negative through a scanner? Seems like a dicey and precarious practice. Could you outline the difference between interpositives, fine grain release print, and negatives? Which are the most likely to be utilized? How do you feel about all of the marketing that surrounds physical media these days?
I'll answer the last part first. I feel fine about anything that is used to promote physical media. So um, that's what you got to do. I mean, you'll remember, and when we started the noir festivals, everything was about not on physical media.
Hmm.
That was like our biggest marketing point was this is not on DVD. And
Yeah.
I can't remember how in those early festivals, that was the thing. We'd put a stamp on the synopsis and not on DVD. And now, of course, none of them are on DVD because all the DVDs are out of print
Yeah.
and DVDs themselves are kind of obsolete. Uh, okay, here's the thing. You don't need to fear the original camera negative going through a scanner because believe me, they have incredibly sophisticated technology now that is not they're not running the risk of damaging that negative by putting it through the scanner. In fact, it's not like run through a scanner like it's run through a projector. I mean, it literally goes frame by frame and it scans each individual frame, which, as film people know, there are 24 of those for every second of screen time. And so that's why it's not really dangerous to the original negative to do that. So, but I would also say, just as somebody who does this, when it says, you know, um, remastered or something from the original camera negative, that doesn't mean it's a restoration because if they haven't done anything to enhance or improve the soundtrack, then it's not a restoration. If you're just getting a digital copy of the first generation camera negative, that's great. But if you haven't restored the soundtrack, then that's not so great. I mean, I know this because the Film Noir Foundation restored the movie Try and Get Me. We did a photochemical restoration of that film and restored the soundtrack. Then later, Olive Films put out a Blu-ray where in between these two things, Paramount found an original negative of the film and it was scanned for and that scan is what Olive's release of the film on Blu-ray is based on, but it is not a restored soundtrack on the Olive release of the film. So they couldn't really say this is a restoration, but they could say scan from the original camera negative. So, okay. So an interpositive is a positive print of the film made from the camera negative that when you're making photochemical prints of the films, that interpositive is used to make duplicate negatives that release prints are then made from. For the very point that David is talking about here, like, wow, you don't want to damage the original negative. True enough. That's why they make an interpositive that a duplicate negative is made from, which that dupe negative is then what they use to make the release prints that you see. So, and then he says, what about a fine grain? Um, David's got most of his nomenclature correct here, except fine grains are virtually never release prints because the fine grain is the actual print stock itself, which is you make a copy from the negative at a super low speed, and it gives you the most detail and the finest, obviously, the finest grain that you can get in like a 35 millimeter print. But those are rarely in circulation. So they make a fine grain to see like how good this image actually is. But the fine grain rarely goes out. So like when I would ask for films, they would say, no, all we have is a fine grain and we're not letting it out. And then what was the other question? And negatives. Well, negatives is there's the original camera negative, and then everything after that is a dupe neg. And most of the bulk of the release prints are going to be made from dupe negatives. And so when we're looking to do a restoration, you always want to work from an original camera negative, but it's very, very rare to find those, especially the work we do, because we're often dealing with defunct distributors or production companies where they wouldn't actually have the original camera negative. So what you want is to find a dupe negative, which in many cases, like we'll find dupe negatives at the British Film Institute and places like that, because the studios would send a dupe negative to make foreign language prints, subtitled print, that kind of stuff. So you can find a dupe negative in an archive somewhere, but you're only going to find the original camera negative at the studio that produced the film. There is absolutely no reason why they would ever let those negatives go. They just, so that's how all that works. And yeah, there's no drawback to doing marketing something as being scanned from the original negative. But like I said, it doesn't mean it's a restoration. Does that all make sense? Is that
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, release prints and circulation prints, and then there's archival prints and all this stuff. And obviously, an archival print is just a print that they strike that they have no intention of circulating. It's just so we know one good pristine print of the film in our inventory. And this is I have begged, borrowed, and almost stolen variations on all of these to be able to show them theatrically. And clearly, what David is not saying in this question, but what he's hinting at is this is the challenge of continuing to show 35 millimeter prints theatrically, because there is expense involved in doing all of this that the studios don't really want to do because they don't see the payback, and B, they're becoming less and less able to do it because the equipment is becoming obsolete, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the studios, they're not investing in anything that would allow them to continue to make photochemical prints of the movies.
Yeah.
They're only interested in digital versions of it. So that's why this becomes more and more difficult.
Yeah.
And as I've explained in the past, the Film Noir Foundation is not going to go and try to convince a studio to let us spend money to restore a film that they own the rights to.
Yeah.
They should do it themselves. But we're trying to figure out ways that the Film Noir Foundation can leverage its success, if you want to, to convince them that it's a good idea to make new prints of things.
Yeah.
And they, when they do it, like Alan had a few things in Palm Springs that were newly made, but they weren't film prints. They were
Mhm.
digital versions of the films. So that's just how it's going these days. Okay.
Okay.
Mitchell asks, this film D.O.A.
Again.
is one of the most important of the early noir cycle. Why by now has it not been given a high def release? All of the reasons I just cited, plus the quote unquote rights to the film ended up somehow, and I don't even know if this is true, with Wade Williams, who was a difficult guy to deal with, and it was produced by Leo and Harry Popkin, and Wade ended up controlling their whole film library.
Yeah.
But the condition of those original materials and things were not great, and Wade did not have the money to do these proper restorations and preservations and things, and so that's why you've never seen a full on D.O.A. But the ones I have seen aren't terrible.
Yeah.
But I doubt you're ever going to see a good 35 millimeter print of D.O.A. ever again. I know that Mitchell is asking about a high def release, and I will be honest with you, that's going to be a pirated thing. That somebody's going to have to say, we'll take the best existing digital source we can find, and then we'll do a digital restoration and a digital enhancement of that. But if you did that and you tried to put it out there, it's technically not legal, but we'll see if somebody wants to do that.
Okay, and this next one's from Fred from Hanahan, South Carolina. Has the FNF thought about restoring slash making available the 1948 I Love Trouble starring French Tone and a bevy of lovely ladies, as they used to say, not to mention a whole lot of terrific character actors? For one thing, it's the closest film I can think of to a comedic film noir. And how about Johnny O'Clock? I'd love to be able to get those on Blu-rays that have been restored and featuring a commentary tracks by well, I'm sure you can think of someone.
Okay, I Love Trouble. Both of these movies are owned by Sony Pictures. They were both Columbia releases.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny O'Clock has been released. I honestly can't remember if it was on Blu-ray or DVD. It was part of a box set.
Yeah, it's part of the Columbia collection.
Yeah, Sony did the Columbia Noir sets, which were really great. And I did not do a commentary track on that film, but I wrote the booklet that accompanied that set that Johnny O'Clock was in. And I Love Trouble was really, really hard to find for a long time. And I remember years ago showing it in Los Angeles without the titles, because the only version we could find did not have a title sequence on it. It has since been restored by Sony. So the good news, Fred, is that there are, I believe, both a 35 millimeter print of I Love Trouble and a DCP, a digital cinema package. But that does not answer your question about it getting a release, which I just don't know about that. I don't, this is what's happening right now. I mean, you will notice that big companies aren't investing at all in releases of old films on physical media. Generally, it's smaller companies who license the titles from the big companies because they are still passionate about physical media and putting that stuff out. So, all of those, Arrow and Impact and Shout Factory and Kino Lorber, who's a leading one, if they want to make those deals and put them out, they can do that. But the studios themselves are probably not going to do that again.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Um,
definitely Kino Lorber, so people know, is a good source for classic releases. Because a lot of the smaller kind of, I don't know if you call them imprints or not, but these companies like Shout Factory and Vinegar Syndrome, they specialize a lot in more cult films and stuff like that.
right,
So I think,
right.
so if people are looking for classics, Kino Lorber is a really good place to start.
Absolutely. And it's interesting when I started doing all of this, the business was very different than it is now. Uh, I knew all of the archivists at all the major studios, and now I don't.
No.
I mean it because the many of those people were doing that job for years before I showed up on the scene, and they've retired. And the people who've replaced them, this is not a criticism, but they just are not as knowledgeable. They don't. They're not as engaged with older films in the vaults, right? But what has happened is because, and I'm just speaking now about film noir, because we've had so much success with the festivals and the show on TCM and everything, if I'm able to find a film and get it back up on the screen and draw some attention to it, one of these companies will come along and say, huh, we'll deal with the getting the license for this and clearing the rights and all this kind of stuff to put it out on a Blu-ray. And it works both ways because like with Kino, we rediscovered and found the print of and showed Robert Siadmak's The Devil Strikes at Night. Uh, and because of that, Kino eventually put out a beautiful digital restoration of that film, right? So we kind of participated in that. On the other hand, Brett Wood at Kino Lorber, who was their main acquisition guy, he is the one who found this movie Black Gravel that
Yeah.
that I didn't know anything about. And then Brett just called and said, "You got to see this movie. It's fantastic." And I've been touting Black Gravel ever since, but it was entirely because he found it and put it out at Kino Lorber. And so that was from the very beginning. That's what I've been showing at the film festivals and everything is the digital version of that film that Kino Lorber made. Uh, so that two-way street now exists where it did not exist 20 something years ago when I started doing this. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And we should mention Flickr Alley.
Of course, Flickr Alley is our thank you, Ann.
Yeah.
Flickr Alley is our partner in our digital releases. And I always appreciated their willingness to they're not in it for big bucks. They're in it to rescue and distribute aspects of film history that would otherwise be overlooked. And whereas obviously film noir is having something of a renaissance, if I can say that. And so, the stuff we do with them sells really well.
Yeah.
Um, but it allows them to continue putting out silent films, esoteric films, short films, specialty films, all kinds of stuff that would otherwise not get released. So all of these things sort of work hand in hand in the way the aftermarket, if you will. I don't even know if that's what it's called. That's only what it's called for new films. just the market for classic cinema is challenging right now. But it's good to know that there are people doing this. Is this mean?
Yes, 8.
Okay, Linda says, this is timely. I would love to
Yeah.
hear your thoughts on The Big Combo. I wasn't expecting much, but this movie blew me away. Well, Anne, I'll tell you some of my thoughts, but what are your thoughts? Because you just saw it on the big screen in LA. I think we
Yeah,
talked about this last time.
we did. So this question came in actually like about it, is one of our backlog questions and
Okay.
stuff. But it's kind of interesting that it came up when we were answering it right when you at TCM Eddie presented the introduction and interview before the big combo, which is a fantastic film, and it was a gorgeous restoration, which I assume we'll get a release eventually onto you know,
I think
home.
that was the point of
That was
doing it.
that
Yes.
was kind of the point of screening it at the festival. But God, that was a beautiful restoration. And of course, it was shot by John Alton, who's my favorite cinematographer and one of the greatest cinematographers, and could just do such an amazing job on these really low budgeted films. They looked amazing. And he wrote a book about lighting called Painting with Light. So, which I don't know, I have a copy of it. I don't know if it's still in print or not. Anyway, but it's a really good story. I mean, for me, I'm like Colonel Wild and is a little weak, but
Yeah, he's a little stiff. I've never been a huge Cornell Wilde fan.
yeah, me neither. But of course, Richard Conti is amazing in it. I mean, just this really despicable, narcissistic um criminal, and is very good. And Brian Donlevy's great as sort of the almost washed up kind of mob guy. And people probably know I have a oh, this is Lee Van Cleef's in it, who
Lee Van Cleef. Yeah.
currently have a photo of him as my desktop at work from for a few dollars, no, from Escape from New York. And a coworker came up, looked at it, and he said, wow, that's like a real man. It's like, this was a straight guy that said this, by the way. And it was like,
Lee
yeah,
Van Cleef. Yeah.
don't make them like that anymore.
The Scot.
And there's just so much to it. It's just a very well written story. It's a very tight story, fast paced, and even down to like these smaller parts are well cast and very good.
Helen Walker has that small little part at the end that,
And
that is
she's,
uh, that is great. It's kind of the pivotal role in the movie, props to Cornell Wilde because Helen Walker was the last film she made, and she was an alcoholic and
uh,
not not particularly employable at that point because she was an angry, belligerent alcoholic,
yeah.
and he cast her, in the film anyway, and she gives a really great performance. Um, it's I can't remember what company did it, but several years ago, a company in England, you might remember who these companies are. It was Arrow or somebody put out a Blu-ray of the big combo, and I did the audio commentary for it. And watching the film again in like really concentrating on that film, I was very surprised by by certain aspects of it, and I think my audio commentary may have come off a little derisive of the film, only because I was discovering how I knew that Joseph came to direct the film pretty late in the process, like Cornell Wilde, who was essentially the producer of the film. Wanted Jack Palance to play the Richard Conte part, and they actually started shooting with Jack Palance before everything fell apart and he walked off the picture, and God bless, Conte came in and saved the day. And Joseph H. Lewis, just like with Gun Crazy, he was kind of a late hire. like, who can we get to do this? And everybody knew that he had a great reputation for working fast and being very competent, and he's not going to waste your money.
Yeah.
And but I was surprised at how few shots there are in that movie. And it is my supposition that it's the only film that he made with John Alton.
Yeah.
And my supposition is that when he saw how Alton could light a set and make it dramatic without the need to edit so
Mhm.
much, that he just composed all of these very simple setups to shoot the film as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And when you watch and really study that film, it's remarkable, except for the big scenes, right? The big climax, the killing of Brian Donlevy, the torture scene where they have Cornell Wilde in that basement room. Those things have some action to them.
Yeah.
Most of the scenes are one single shot, one single static shot, or very unobtrusive camera moves that you don't even notice. And I'm not going to ever say that Joseph H. Lewis is a director like Otto Preminger, but Preminger did the same thing. Like, if he didn't have to cut, he wasn't going to cut. There
Yeah.
had to be a reason for him to cut into a close up or to cut to some other shot. Otherwise, he figured out how to just move the camera and do it in one take. And I was very surprised to see how much of that there is in the big combo. It's a different film when you really watch it carefully. It's a different film than you think it is, just because there's so much big action and big performances in front of the camera. You don't realize how simple the direction is in that movie.
Yeah, and I think it really, and the thing about when you do that, then when the scenes that are high impact are really, really high impact. And I think part of that is because the other scenes are done sort of without a lot of interruption in terms of, visual interruption. Um, which is funny because that's making me think of Better Call Saul. And I think, and also John Ford. I mean, John Ford was really
Yeah.
famous. He would just edit in the camera so that the editor wouldn't have anything
Yeah,
really to work with
there were no
besides.
decisions to be made. It's like, this is how it's going to be put together.
Yeah, and he would use a lot of long shots, and I think when you do that kind of still cam work, it really does give kind of an intimacy with what is going on and with what's going on with the characters and the character beats. Like it's really can be a really effective way of making a film. And we were talking before about when you're younger, when you're older. I think when I was younger, I was always much more impressed with people that could really move the camera and stuff like that. And then as I got older, I'm more appreciative of having sort of an unobtrusive camera. And
Yeah,
you're moving it with purpose when you're moving it.
the Ozu technique.
Oh God, I love Ozu. Did I tell you about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, it's just not interfering, not interjecting his
Yeah,
thing. Yeah, it's and there's a real elegance to it
yeah,
when you can do it really well. It's I'm not saying that there are B movie directors who just set the camera up and say, just do it, and I
oh
can give
yeah,
a crap.
yeah,
That's not what we're talking about. It's like guys like Joseph Lewis and Max Opals, who's great at moving the camera in a way that you don't even realize the camera is moving.
yeah,
It's so unobtrusive, but it's so I often use the word elegant because that's what you want to see. You want to see elegant camera movement. Max Opals, Otto Preminger, Stanley Kubrick. This is elegant camera moves, as opposed to, you know, uh, well, Martin Scorsese, when he moves the camera, he's moving it with serious intention. Like, he wants you to feel the camera moving.
yeah,
Not like he's sneaking around the set. He's like that shot in Goodfellas, where the camera follows them into the Copa.
yeah.
That's meant to be a spectacle.
Right, right.
And I just it's very interesting how all these things can be different. And Kubrick was a guy who, the way he moved the camera in the first half of his career as opposed to the way he moved the camera in the second half of his career, it's different. It's a totally different thing. He's different, and it's much more subtle in the later films than it is in the earlier ones.
And I think sometimes too, that's sort of it's kind of interesting with Kubrick. I'm not a big fan of his mainly because of how he views life. He has a philosophy that I strongly disagree with. Of
Because you find him to be such a pessimist.
Yeah, he's just one of those directors where it's just sort of yeah, that's it. I mean, I have directors I dislike more because of their worldview, who are more extreme in their worldview. But I think he's too. I don't know if it's a worldview or a director's technique, but for me, he's way too detached from his characters, and I really don't like that. And I think that's why my favorite film of his is Barry Lyndon, because to me, that's the best film he ever did about a character. That
Interesting. Yeah.
character is amazing, and the performance by Ryan O'Neal is incredible. But I think part of the reason why I really like that film is because it's really much more of a character piece
Yeah, I hear you.
his other ones, and I mean that by the full complexity of someone, and you know,
Well, he looks at humans like they're under his microscope,
yeah, and it's just
you
like
know,
I don't
and
particularly
and
care
there's
for
an absurdity. He I think he sees humans as being basically kind of pathetic and absurd. And if it fits the material, it's super powerful. Like
yeah,
I just watched Paths of Glory again the other day.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
that is a
yeah,
really strong film. I mean,
yeah,
and it is the absurdity of what is wrong with people, you know.
yeah, yeah,
But then there's that absurdity is also in Lolita, but
yeah,
it's kind of funny. I mean, it's
yeah,
it's it's kind of perverse and uncomfortable, but it's still humans are weird and absurd, but it's not Paths of Glory. It's a different kind of thing. And Doctor Strangelove, it's more people are absurd,
yeah.
people are ridiculous.
No fighting in the war room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think with Lolita, I mean, I think Lolita is just a book people need to stop trying to adapt because for one thing, they always seem to miss. I mean, the thing that makes Lolita like an amazing book is you have an extremely unreliable narrator who's
Yes.
trying to just justify his completely disgusting
Yeah,
actions.
that he's obsessed with these young girls. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
And
And
it's not
yeah,
just, and the other thing was, and it's interesting. I just did an interview for a documentary about James B. Harris, who's
yeah,
was Kubrick's producer for all those films, for The Killing and Paths of Glory and Lolita, and they were like a real team, a producing directing team. But it is interesting that the way they got Lolita made was convincing the censors that Humbert was actually in love with Lolita.
yeah,
Like it was like her.
yeah,
In the book, it's clear that it's young girls.
yeah,
It's just like she was the exemplar of his obsession with these young women, you know.
yeah,
And that was a no-go because that was too much, right?
yeah,
And there was like I think it was a whole montage scene in the original film where he's out like lurking in supermarkets and department stores and he's just ogling all these prepubescent girls,
yeah.
and it's just like, no, 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 that's not going in the movie. We can't do that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Even though I thought Kubrick did a good job when you see her at the end.
oh,
Like I
yeah.
like that he did that because I kind of felt like that it was a more serious subject matter than Kubrick was really doing it tone
Yeah,
wise.
absolutely.
But
I
he
agree.
did put that scene at the end, where you got kind of, no, this is the reality. And
Right.
it's you've destroyed her life. And I liked that he put that in there because I felt that
Yep.
that scene needed to happen. Wow, I can't remember what this question was about.
Um, there was about the bits. We started out on the big combo, and
Oh,
then
you're talking about
it
cinematography.
somehow turned into talking about camera movement, and then it turned into Stanley Kubrick, and then it turned into Lolita, and there you have it.
Yeah,
So, one of these days, I am going to watch Barry Lyndon again. I would love to see it on a big screen, not on my television,
yeah.
because I remember not really enjoying it when I saw it on initial release, and quite honestly, I've never watched it again.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it at the cast show when I think they were playing it in 70 millimeter, and I had never seen it. And it's funny because I was coming from work when I worked somewhere else, and I had to take a taxi, and the taxi was late, so I was really anxious about getting there on time. But I did, and it was so gorgeous. For people that don't know, that was shot with all ambient lighting,
Yeah,
and they had to use like a special lens for the camera that actually came from NASA. And so one, the cinematography in that film is spectacular. I mean, it's just incredible. But for me, like I said, it's by far my favorite Kubrick film just because the Ryan O'Neill's performance in that character is so great, and it's very heartbreaking, but the character is very multifaceted too, which is what makes it so great, He's sort of, it's based on a novel, just in case people don't know that. But I don't, and it's getting a release on home video, but I just don't particularly want. I don't really want to watch it at home because I, I think it needs to be seen in a
yeah,
theater, and I think that's a part of a problem with Kubrick's films is they just play way better in the theater because he uses a lot of static long shots and stuff like that, which doesn't translate well into a
yeah.
home.
2001 is not a movie you need to watch at home.
Yeah,
That's yeah. Um, it's interesting that another aspect of Barry Lyndon that I think is so fascinating is, and only Kubrick would have endeavored to make that film the way he made it, which
yeah,
was he wanted to use every bit of advanced technology to make a film set in a time when there was no electricity,
yeah,
so that it was all candlelight and everything. And he had to figure out how to do that with film stocks and things that were not particularly sensitive to light the way they are now. So what's weird is if you're 30 years old and you watch Barry Lyndon now, or if you made Barry Lyndon now, if you remade it, it would be easy
yeah,
because the digital technology is so sensitive to light that you can actually shoot scenes with actual candlelight. And back then, Kubrick was figuring out how can I make it look like this scene is lit by nothing but candlelight. But it was this massive technical challenge
yeah,
to do that. And that was, I think, part of the reason why he wanted to make that movie
yeah.
was just because of that technical, because he was a photographer first and
Yes,
foremost,
for
right?
people that know.
And I just find that so fascinating that today I don't think people will appreciate the lengths he went to make that film and to get those images on film that were, you know, just extraordinary uh, for that era when he was making the movie. So
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm blanking on the name of the cinematographer for that film.
I want to say it was Jeffrey Unsworth. Is that correct? I'm not positive.
Yeah, I want to check just because I think it's
Okay,
important
well
because he
let's
did such an amazing job.
give give the guy his due. And
Yeah,
are you looking it up?
I'm looking it up now. Do you have any more thoughts on Big Combo? Since that's what we were actually talking about.
No, I can't stress enough how Alton's lighting is like such an incredible how much of the drama it carries in
Yeah.
the movie. How much of that movie's impact is in the lighting.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing too. No, it was John Alcott
John Alcott. Okay, sorry, I was
who,
giving
yeah,
Jeffrey Unsworth undue credit there. John Alcott. Yeah.
yeah, who also did Terror Train, which is like this 70s horror film with Jamie Lee Curtis after Halloween and stuff.
Yeah.
And The opening shot of it, like there's like the train where all these kids are getting on the train, and it's like beautiful, right? There's like the lampposts and the snow coming down, and I'm like, you don't really see this in like low budget horror
In low budget
films.
horror films.
And
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell? And I stopped and looked it up, and I was, this is John Alcott shot this.
Amazing. Amazing. And we knew we'd get a B horror film in the conversation at some point. And that was,
Yeah, but
I think you set that whole thing up just
I
so you
did
could bring
not.
Terror Train into the conversation.
This
Okay.
is not true. Okay, and this our next question is are there plans to screen Black Tuesday on Nor Alley at some point? And this is Robert from New Jersey.
um, yeah, I certainly hope to do that. Now that it is sort of back in circulation, uh, when it pops up on the list of available titles, I will be screening that first opportunity.
It is a great film. I
It's a
I
great film, and
really enjoyed watching
speaking
that.
of great cinematography, that's Stanley Cortez,
Yes.
and that has some of the most interesting camera work of the 1950s is in that movie because he shot the if there are any watching this who shot 16 millimeter film when they were younger, you had plus X and tri X if you were shooting black and white film.
Yeah.
And Stanley Cortez shot that film on tri X film, and it's for low light situations, and it has a very particular look to it. This super high contrasty, very gritty look to that movie, and it impoverished film. Ugo Fregonese is the director, and a great performance by Edward G. Robinson, an angry performance by Edward G. Robinson, and it's tough, and it's a really brutal, mean film with like the last 20 minutes of it is not there's nonstop gunfire
Yeah.
for the last 20 minutes of the film. It's remarkable. So they're trapped in a warehouse, and trying to figure out how they're going to get away, and it's extraordinary. So yeah, we'll be showing that. I don't want to talk about it too much. I will spoil it. So yeah, and that's great. That was a film that was really missing for some reason for a number of years. I showed it like 15 or maybe even 18 years ago in Hollywood, and then when we went back a few years later, it's like, no, the film is gone. We don't know where the film is. And I want to thank my colleague Ehsan Hoshbacht, who's one of the programmers at the Il Cinema Ritrovato Festival in Bologna, because it was his perseverance that got a new print of that film made, because he was doing an Ugo Fregonese retrospective in Bologna. And that's why that film is now back in circulation. So kudos to him. As part of that community I was talking about earlier, about how film festivals, physical media providers, archivists, TCM, we all kind of have to work together now to find and preserve and exhibit these films. And so yeah, I'll do my part. Now that Ehsan has revived the film, I will do my part to get it seen by showing it on Noir Alley. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, here's where you have to do your magic.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a question from John in Junction City, Wisconsin. He says, I was wondering if anyone could identify the actor on the right. I believe he often played a heavy in many noir films. Would you happen to know what this picture is from? If you can't ID the picture, then how about the name of the actor? Does he look familiar? Okay, and this is kind of funny. He says, FYI, I am preparing to play in a trivia contest and need to ID this photo.
Unfortunately, that trivia contest was a year ago.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, okay. So we let you down, buddy.
Yeah.
But hold on. I'm trying to move the screen so I can actually see this picture.
You can actually see it.
Um, yeah, the light isn't particularly good here, but
Yeah.
uh, I'm trying to just figure out what the hell is going on in this photograph.
It
Like,
looks like a guy in drag being strangled by a guy in a
well, it's clearly a guy being choked, yes, and he's wearing like this lace collar, and I don't know if it's drag or like a masquerade ball or something because it appears he has a mask pushed up on his forehead.
I thought that
And
was like a Carmen Miranda rap
well,
thing.
I honestly I can't
I
tell.
can't
I'm going
really
to be honest
tell.
with you. The glasses
Maybe
I'm
it is
wearing
a
right
mask.
now,
It is a mask. You're right. It's a mask, and that's like a ruff.
yeah,
Maybe. I don't know. But that looks like feathers. I don't know. It's weird
I don't know, but I'm going to make a confession to you. The eyeglasses I'm wearing are not really eyeglasses. They're just protective glasses
for the
for the computer screen, and they're, as we've commented before, they're very close to the ones you're wearing. They kind of, but but it prevents me because I don't have my glasses right here from seeing this super clearly. That guy looks kind of familiar, but I just can't place him. I'm wondering, I'm hoping that there are people watching who might be able to identify who that is. And I will say that in case I feel bad for John in Junction City,
yeah.
Wisconsin, but John, if you have this picture, you can drop it into Google Images
There you go.
and see if it finds. We've done this before, right? Where somebody had to
Yeah.
send us a picture like,
Yeah.
who are all these people and what's the movie? And all you have to do is drop it into Google Images and it'll search the internet and find that same picture. And if you're lucky, it'll have a caption or something on it and tell you who it actually is. But
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, the guy really does look familiar, but it's just I cannot place that actor. Sorry.
Okay. That's
Hate it.
okay.
I hate it when I don't know the answer to something. I hate it.
There you go. Okay, let me get this off the screen, which I'm having a brain fart. So,
I
but I'll
don't
get
even,
it off
and
here.
I can't tell who the other actor is. I'd like to know who both those actors are
Yeah,
and what the hell is going on in this scene.
I know because I feel like I don't know. It's just
And if
so
the guy,
weird.
and it's
Because
also
when I
weird
first
because,
saw it, I thought the guy was in drag.
yeah, and if the guy is supposed to be screaming for his life because he's being choked, he's doing a terrible acting job because he looks kind of amused by the whole thing. I mean, he doesn't look really terrified. He's kind of like, ah, ha, ha, what are you doing?
Yeah, and I still can't tell if he's in drag or not.
Yeah, I don't,
Anyway,
I don't. That was
enough
a
of that.
total swing and a miss on that one. But
Yeah. But I also wanted to kind of point out, I am, as you could tell from the first couple of questions you have, when stuff is time sensitive, like if I see it come in, I'm trying to get those in episodes for people, so we're
well,
not
and
like
you did
delaying
and he
someone's.
had a trivia contest coming up, and you now you tell me it's like a year ago.
Yeah.
It's too late for that.
But if
Yeah,
you do know who that actor is or what the movie is or what the hell's going on, put it in
let
the
us
comments
know.
on either Facebook or on our YouTube, you know, posting of the video. So there you go.
Um,
I
who
complete.
who who's
That was
reading?
so exciting that I've kind of forgotten where we were.
We're
Uh,
down to the last question.
Down the last question. This is Britt from Lynchburg, Virginia.
Britt always comes through with a good question. We like Britt,
Yeah. The diner
but
scene.
Britt has to weigh in and let us know if Britt is a man or a woman.
Yeah. Give us an update, and I will jump that if you want to give us an update.
Yeah.
The diner
I'm
scene.
just imagining Britt Eklund. I'm imagining
Yeah. Well,
Britt Eklund
that's
is
where
asking these
my
questions, and
yeah
anyway,
that's where my mind went too. So I just assume she's a woman. Maybe she's not. The diner scene at the beginning of Out of the Past always makes me hungry for a sandwich and a cup of coffee. The scene in The Godfather where everyone's waiting to hear where the meeting between Michael and Sollozzo is going to be held always gives me a huge craving for Chinese food and a bottle of beer or Coca-Cola. Are there any North scenes that give you the munchies? Bon appetit.
Very good. Okay, Anne, do you have any that uh and it's funny because it give you the munchies instead of just like great eating scenes, it's like or food scenes.
Ones that actually kind of
It's
make
like
you,
ones that actually inspire you to want to eat something. Well, I'll tell you, um, every so often, I think I mentioned this on our show here, but I have not eaten a piece of meat in over 40 years. So, uh, but I only say that to say that whenever Peggy Cummins bites into that hamburger in Gun Crazy,
yeah,
I'm always like, because she's so hungry and she just like, I can taste a hamburger,
yeah,
even though I haven't eaten a hamburger in over 40 years.
yeah,
I can taste that hamburger. So uh, that's one. And the guy says, onions are extra. And they're like, oh, forget the onions then.
yeah.
My favorite, well, that was mine. Do you have one?
Oh, I'll wait for you to finish and then I'll come back.
Okay, because then
Because
I
mine
might.
isn't noir, so
Oh, okay. Well, then if you're going to go that way, then we have all kinds of examples.
yeah.
Um, the best food scene in a film noir is in Deception, the Betty Davis with Claude Rains, and there's a restaurant scene in Deception that is one of the great Claude Rains scenes of all time.
Yes.
If there was nothing else to the movie but that one scene where he tortures Betty Davis and Paul Henry by taking them out to dinner and just acting the king and
Yeah.
ordering everything on the menu made in a very specific way. And oh, how did you use this cooked with Madeira and and all it's Claude Rains at his absolute best. And I love that scene. It doesn't actually make me hungry. It kind of
Yeah.
has the opposite effect. It's like
Right. Because
I
you're
don't
so
need to eat
tense.
for a day after watching this scene. But it is memorable.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it's like uh I can't really think of a noir, but the TV series Midnight Diner, which people haven't seen it. It's a Japanese
Oh yeah,
series. It's available on Netflix, and it all takes place in this diner that's open from like midnight to 7, and so each episode is like a little story about either one of their patrons. There's kind of a group of patrons that are kind of always there, like
right.
office workers who get off late, Marilyn the stripper, who's my mother's favorite character, and
I love the
the
guy
old
who's
guy.
her biggest fan.
Yeah, the old guy in the
The old
baseball
guy with the
cap.
baseball cap who's her biggest fan.
Yeah,
And
he dresses like a Midwestern farmer. It's so hilarious. And the gangster, and then interesting, he winds up kind of the closest he gets to anybody there is actually this drag queen who owns a bar, a drag bar, and in the development sort of the relationship over the series is sort of interesting because they really do have a connection. And so anyway, but each episode centers around one dish. So it's this one customer asking for a dish, and you kind of see why that dish is important for that person, what it kind of signifies in the
right.
story around it. Anyway, so it wound up like I just like have that show makes me hungry, like for
Yeah,
whatever they're
I totally
showing.
get that. And it's
Yeah.
wonderful because every show does uh hinge on a particular meal. And then at the end of the show, they actually break the fourth wall
Yes.
and they talk about that dish, like
Yeah.
how that dish is made or whatever. It's I love that show.
Yeah. And they just give
We've
you like a
talked
little
about
quick.
that before, how much we love that show.
Yeah.
And now that talking about it reminds me, there's a scene in Somewhere in the Night, the Fox Noir with John Hodiak and Nancy Guild.
Yeah.
There's a scene with Lloyd Nolan in that movie in a Chinese restaurant that has that effect where he is picking food out with his chopsticks as they're talking, and
Yeah.
he's so good in this scene
Yeah.
that it's like you cannot not want Chinese food when you're watching this scene.
Yeah.
That's like the thing in The Godfather. Although if I ate, um, meat, and I did when The Godfather came out, but McCluskey orders, I think, the veal when they're
Yeah.
in the restaurant, right?
Yeah.
And Sterling Hayden tucks the napkin in his buttoned up collar, and he
Yeah.
gets ready to have his last meal, But he's like, so I hear the veal's good or something. And yeah, hope you enjoyed it because it is your last meal, buddy.
And you do say like yeah, Italian films, like a lot of times, like the food just looks so good to
Oh
me.
yeah.
So I think there's
Oh,
definitely like countries where I get distracted by the food more because especially Japanese food. Like and
well,
like Ozu is a really good example of, since I want to just bring him up again because he's a genius. But because most of his films are kind of centered around the domestic space, like food takes on this importance too to the story.
and also you find that like when we're recording this, I just today
Yeah.
showed Touche Pas Grisby
Yeah.
on TCM, and French films they obsess
Yeah.
over the food,
Yeah.
and that movie in particular, all of Gabon's films in the 50s, he was always eating,
Yeah, I know.
and there was something about just the way he would the way he handled himself at a table,
Yeah.
with the wine and the food and the breaking of the French bread and everything.
Yeah.
It's like I always get a hankering for like I need French bread, I need some French cheese, and I need a glass of wine, and I need it now. As soon as you're
Yeah.
watching a Jean Gabin film,
He
that's
does
like
make you want to eat. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
gotta you gotta have the food with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Especially
That
as
was
soon as you said that, I thought of the bread. Isn't that funny? Like the way that he breaks his bread. Because
break bread.
as soon as you said Jungleman, I thought bread.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and it's just fantastic. And okay, so that was our last question. Thank you, Britt. That was a really good question and great fun. Britt gets it. Britt gets like you know questions that trigger stuff in your head, and then you kind of can follow all these little detours and things. Like I hadn't thought of that scene in Somewhere in the Night
Yeah.
for years until this question, and it's like, yeah, I remember Lloyd Nolan eating that Chinese. And there's a diner scene in Try and Get Me where Lloyd Bridges is trying to get Frank Lovejoy to eat breakfast,
Yeah.
and Lovejoy doesn't want anything, and just the way Lloyd Bridges, it's not appetizing at all,
Yeah.
but he's like telling the waitress, give him this, give him that,
Yeah.
and he's like hitting this bottle of ketchup to put on but come on, dig into it, and get over yourself. And it's just like that scene is interesting because it almost makes me want to barf.
Yeah. Or you just don't want to eat.
Because you so empathize with this guy who's like, what the hell is that? Because Lovejoy in that film is so tortured by the fact that they've killed this guy and he can't eat. And Lloyd Bridges is just forcing him to get some food in you, and it's queasy. It's very queasy. Um, it brought something else came to mind a second ago because of everything we were talking. Oh, what have you been watching lately, Ann, that you're going to recommend? I want to get back on our track of giving the people who spend their hard-earned recreation time listening to us. We want to always leave them with some recommendations for
Ted
things
and
to
I are
watch.
currently watching the second season of Poker Face.
Haven't started it yet,
Yeah.
but I certainly shall. Is it as good so far as the first one?
We both didn't really think the first episode was that great. We both really liked the second episode
Okay.
a lot. The third and fourth were pretty good. I really feel like so far for me, the second one has been the best this season. But since we're gonna wind up now that we're caught up, we're gonna be able to watch one episode a week as they drop them. So I got a copy of Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Hill House because I've turned Ted into a huge Mike Flanagan fan.
Okay,
Because
good.
yeah, because he accidentally when he came over one time, I was rewatching Midnight Mass, and he looked at it. He's like, "I really want to watch this," and so ever since then, we've been doing the different Mike Flanagan series. So Oh, and I'm
Interesting.
gonna go see Clown in Cornfield.
That I liked Midnight Mass.
It's fantastic.
As somebody who was raised a Catholic, it has an impact on you definitely,
Yeah.
uh, and also the whole alcoholism theme in that
Yeah.
show is really well handled, really well handled.
Yeah.
And I
Flanagan
hadn't
and
thought
his
of it.
wife are sorry, go ahead.
No, and it's just funny. I hadn't thought of it before, but it's like because of all the hullabaloo right now over Sinners, over Ryan Coogler's Sinners. Which, have you seen that yet?
Not yet.
Okay. There's an affinity between Sinners and Midnight Mass,
Yeah.
uh, and that's pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm not. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to talk about Sinners, but
Okay.
we will talk about it when you have seen it,
Okay.
because it's very interesting film. Um, but I was going to say that I'm a huge fan of MHZ, the
Yeah.
network that has a lot of foreign television, and it's almost 90% crime shows from around the world.
Yeah.
But I started watching this series because it was like, I'm going to confess, I was a little OD'd on the crime series.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, the state of the world today. It's like, do I want to watch more, crime shows, given that every single day is a crime show?
Yeah.
And and Kathleen and I came across this show from France called The Doc and the Vet.
Yeah.
I am now obsessed with this show. I enjoy it so much. So here is the premise of this show. It's set in a small cheese making community in rural France,
Yeah.
where there is no general practitioner in the town, but there is
Yeah.
a veterinarian, because the people in the town rely more on their animals than
Right.
people, right? So there's goats and sheep and cows and all, because they make cheese,
You're right.
right? And one day, this doctor rolls into town, this young woman, who decides she wants to become a GP in a little small town. And of course, there's a backstory that you learn later as to why she ended up in this small town. And being a French show, they make no big deal out of the fact that the vet is like in his early 60s and she's like 30.
Yeah.
It's just like whatever.
Yeah.
And he has a fully grown son who's obsessed with her,
Yeah.
and the father and the son are like rivals for her attention. But it's such a wonderful show, because there's a mystery element to virtually every episode, but the mystery is what's poisoning the animals, or
Yeah.
and it's all so real, and the townsfolk, just they don't even look like actors, they
Yeah.
look like real people. And it's just, I don't want to say it's charming, because that's selling it short. There's a lot of charm in the show, because it's just where it's set. It's not, there's no violence, but there's nature.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating to me that stuff happens in this show that would never happen on an American TV show, because to deal with the reality of nature is like too much for Americans. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, don't kill the dog. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, in this show, it's like the dogs are going to die. I mean, it happens. Like, animals die, and the vet can't save everybody, and there's drama to it,
Yeah.
that is very real and very human. And it's just a very, very well done show. And each episode is like a movie. They're 90 minutes long,
Yeah.
and I can't say enough about it. I just love the actors. The young woman, I don't even know her name. Kathleen, she says, I don't want you to know her name because you'll stalk her. She's just adorable. Anyway, that's my recommendation.
Yeah, and I've also been rewatching. I had kind of a hard week last week, so I was rewatching a lot of the Poirot series with David Suchet, which he's the ultimate
Yeah,
portrayal of that character. But if you haven't watched them, I think they're on Acorn now, and you just want to watch one randomly. Three Act Tragedy is my favorite episode of all of it. And it stars Martin Shaw. And it was such a shock the first
let's
time I
say Martin
saw him.
Short.
No, Martin Shaw. He's a British actor who's kind of like I had a crush on him in high school, actually. So it was weird to see him in something. He's aged well. But I was really shocked. Like at the end, I started crying because I was so moved by the murderer's final, sort of monologue, his explanation of his life. And I was just
It
like,
happens. It
it
happens.
really
Oh,
moved me.
I have. I'm going to confess, I've teared up a couple of times at this
I
Docking of the
bet.
show, just because, and it's not because it's sad. It's because I'll just be honest. It's because I would, I would love this kind of life.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a scene where everybody in the town goes out and has like an alfresco lunch together, and it's just like, oh man. I mean, I I I was triggered by Brit's mention of food
Yeah.
because this is a French show, and so
So it's
obviously,
great.
and it's really interesting because as somebody who hasn't eaten meat in 40 years, it's very interesting to see in this show how deeply respectful people are of the animals because it's their livelihood,
Yeah.
but yet they'll still kill them and eat them,
Yeah.
right? And that's, to me, that's just really fascinating because
Yeah.
it's just an acceptance of this is life, this is the life we live.
Yeah.
And it's stuff in this show that you would not see on an American TV show, or if you did, it would be precious.
Yeah.
They would be saying, isn't this just adorable? Whereas in this show, it's just like they're just trying to be authentic and honest to what life in this town is like. And the shows are very, very well constructed, and the plots, because the plots develop virtually out of nothing, right? It's just another day
Yeah.
in this town and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. But then somebody brings in a sick animal, and then it's like the animal dies. And then the guy has to figure out what killed it. And then the mystery is afoot. And I'm not going to say that that they're mysteries necessarily,
Yeah.
but the mystery of nature itself is kind of the point of the show.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's really good.
Yeah.
So I think we're wrapping up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I've run out of stuff to talk about now.
Yeah. So let's see. If you watch on YouTube, if you could like and subscribe, we get like twice as many views as we have subscribers. So if people could subscribe, that'd be great. And share. Carlton always shares. And let's see what else. If you'd like to support, like even if just because you like us doing this, um, but you want to support our restoration projects, you can donate at filmnoirfoundation.org. And so that would be greatly appreciated. And we also, if you just want to keep abreast of things that we're doing, when we're having festivals, when Eddie's having appearances, and things like that, you can subscribe to our newsletter at filmnoirfoundation.org. If you subscribe to the newsletter and you donate $20 or more, you do get the digital version of North City Magazine, which, by the way, Imogen, that we talked about at the top of the show, whose book was the basis of the PFA series and will be at the PFA, is our editor-in-chief, in case people don't know that,
She
of
is
the magazine.
not a conflict of interest that we're talking about her show. And I will have some interesting news to share soon about a project that Imogen and I are working on together. So
Very exciting.
Beyond the NOIR City magazine, the new issue of which is not done. Michael is laying it out right now. I'm always the last one in because I have to write the letter from the publisher, and I haven't done it yet. But the issue is fantastic. It's got a big cover story tribute to David Lynch and the noir world of David Lynch, and a number of other really great stories in the magazine. I will say that this is kind of funny. Um, every week, once a week, I check Amazon to see how like my latest book is doing, right?
Yeah.
And so Dark City Dames has been out for about a month now, and I'm happy to say it's selling very, very well. But I went on Amazon and I noticed that there were two bad reviews of the book. And so I'm like, huh, why are all these 5-star reviews and these two really bad reviews? And I looked at it. This just makes me laugh. One was saying the print is too small. That was, so it's like, wow. So instead of you getting a proper pair of readers, I have to get a 1-star review for the type size in my book. And the other person, it wasn't a bad review, but it was a 3-star review. And they deducted a star because the book was too heavy.
Okay.
The book was too heavy. I could only read it for a certain amount of time before I had to put it down because the book was too heavy. So I love the fact that like these are criticisms that an author has to live with, and whatever. I mean, I used to obsess over this kind of nonsense, like, oh no, because if you give somebody a 1-star review on Amazon, it takes forever to get back to having a 5-star rating on the book, right? And then you look at it and it's like, this isn't even fair. You're talking about the type size. You're not talking about the 2 years of work I put in on this book. You're talking about the type size. Anyway, or the weight of the book, whereas most people would think, great book, substantial. It's like, no, it's too heavy. And I'm going to say, most people, is the other thing, because I do happen to have a copy of it right here. So I don't know if I ever showed you this, or did I do this already?
No.
Say to people who buy the book, like, here's the book, and they never take the jacket off. Who would take that jacket off? Because it's a beautiful picture of Marie Windsor. Yeah. But if you take the jacket off, suspense music, you get this fabulous image of Audrey Totter on the front, and you get Jane Greer on the back. See,
very nice.
I don't know. I'm embarrassed if I already did that once before on this show.
You did not, actually.
Okay, so there you have it. It was funny when I was signing books at TCM. I would say to people, "Have you taken the jacket off?" And they would say, "Why?" And then I said, "Just do it when you have a chance. Just you'll get a nice surprise."
Yeah.
So there you go.
So there you go.
So Anne, this was fun.
This was fun. Yeah.
What are you doing tonight?
I need to do meal prep because I wound up having a very long visit with my ex who's in the hospital.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And so that kind of threw off my day. So I have to do food prep for the week. Because if people don't know, I do a complete food prep for the week because I'm body recomping. So my diet's pretty strict, and it's my way to make sure I get enough protein. Which means I am eating animals. And then I had my Columbo group tonight. So we're
fantastic.
Yeah, the Columbo Watch Along group, and we are in the final episode of the original series. And then so we'll start in on the revival then after we finish this one. And if people are interested, you can go to our Facebook group, which is the Columbo Experience. You can just type that in and browse for it.
Super. Okay. I think our job here is done.
Yes, I think so too.
And I appreciate everybody watching. Anne, here's the thing: we would have like 30,000 followers if we did this in like 3-minute increments.
Yes.
Then but because we do 90 minutes of static camera of two people just talking, I think it keeps out the riffraff.
There you go.
Because like only the hardcore will devote themselves to the full 90 minutes. If if it was 90 minutes broken down into 3-minute installments on TikTok, we'd have 500,000 followers. But I don't play that game.
Yeah. Yeah, you had to hear us ramble, but we can't take
We're old school, man.
this.
We're
We're
old
old
school.
school. This is what happens when Generation X wants to have a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm perfectly good with it. I'm happy about it. So
Me too. But thanks everybody for tuning in and sticking it out with us. We appreciate it.
absolutely, absolutely. So thanks. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.